Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a very interesting organization, and that is Rotary International. My guest today is an expert on Rotary. Mr. Peter Kyle, a native New Zealander, was an international attorney with the World Bank, from which he retired 12 years ago. He was chair of the Rotary Peace Centers Committee, and he also served as the dean of the Rotary Representative Network. Currently, he serves on the Rotary International Board of Directors. Mr. Peter Kyle, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you, Bill. Delighted to be with you, and thank you for that very nice introduction.
I appreciate you being with me today. We've got a lot to cover. You and I are both members of an organization that spans the world. Rotary International was created in 1905 by Paul Harris. It has about 1.2 million members in over 36,000 clubs and over 200 countries and territories around the world. I think it was the first service organization ever created, and it is certainly one of the largest without a doubt. But it's a remarkable organization, and its motto is service above self. How do you see, just in, very generally in broad terms and very briefly, how do you see Rotary doing service above self and carrying it out as its motto?
Well, Bill, Rotary is an extraordinary organization. I've been privileged to be part of it for well over 40 years. And the longer I remain a member, the more amazed I am at the breadth and the depth of the engagement that Rotary has internationally and locally. We started out, as you know, as a small organization based in Chicago in 1905, founded by Paul Harris. And very quickly we grew and grew and grew. And now, as you pointed out, over 36,000 clubs, almost 1.2 million members. It's an astonishing achievement that Rotary, after 115 years, remains a strong, vibrant organization, heavily engaged in a wide range of humanitarian activities around the world.
It certainly is. And I'm sure that a large number of our viewers, no matter where they live in the world, know a Rotarian, or they may be a Rotarian, and they're certainly familiar with Rotary. And we would encourage everyone to learn more about Rotary by going to www.rotary.org. Well, Peter, you were the chair, or the dean, I should say, of the Rotary Representative Network. What is the Rotary Representative Network?
So, Bill, Rotary has long had a close association with the United Nations. And perhaps we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about that. Mm-hmm. In 1990, as a result of a number of informal links that Rotarians had developed with various organs of the UN, UNICEF, UNESCO, and so on, the Rotary Board decided to establish the Rotary Representative Network. The network consists of around 16 organizations. Some are UN agencies, some are international organizations. We include UNICEF, UNESCO, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, United Nations Environment Program, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, the European Union, the Commonwealth of Nations, the African League, the Arab Union. So it's really quite an amazing network. And we have appointed Rotarians as ambassadors with a little a, in each of the centers in which those agencies are located. So we have 2 in Rome, 2 in Paris, 2 in Brussels, 2 in London, 3 in Geneva, where the international headquarters of the European headquarters of the United Nations is based, 3 in Nairobi, where the African headquarters of the United Nations is based, 5 in New York, 4 in Washington. So it's really quite a wide network. And I was privileged to serve as the dean of that group for 2 years before I joined the RI International Board.
And I'm glad you brought that up about Rotary being involved with the United Nations, because in 1995, Rotary, which happened to be 1995, happened to be the 50th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations in San Francisco, California. And Rotary did a wonderful documentary on that unique partnership. And it's truly a unique partnership between Rotary International and the United Nations. And we're going to show a little over a minute of that, Peter, and we'll come back and talk about it.
many who doubted that agreement could ever be reached by these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, language and culture. But these differences were all forgotten in one unshakable unity of determination to find a way to end war.
With those sentiments, U.S. President Harry S. Truman and other leaders from around the world founded the United Nations. Its purposes: to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among nations, to help solve global economic and social problems, and to promote human rights. And it's no coincidence that some of these purposes find their roots in Rotary. Nearly 50 Rotarians served as delegates, advisors, and consultants at the historic gathering. The invitation to take part in the Charter Conference was a clear recognition of Rotary's early prominence in efforts to advance understanding, goodwill, and peace around the globe.
Peter, that really highlights the importance of the relationship between the United Nations and Rotary International. And of course, we think back to World War II, we saw where over 60 million people died, Europe lay in ruins, parts of Asia had been destroyed, and the world really was devastated to a large degree. But luckily for the foresight of a leader, especially one leader, such as Franklin Roosevelt, the former president of the United States, who was the architect of the United Nations, he was instrumental in creating an organization that would come online to hopefully eliminate the scourge of war, to promote economic and social development, and to enhance human rights. And Rotary was there from day one and was very involved in helping to create the United Nations. What role did Rotary play in that?
Yes, that's right. Rotary was there at the beginning. In fact, even before the beginning. In 1939, Rotary had over 5,000 clubs and well over 100,000 members. And when Rotarians met at an international conference, this was a meeting of movers and shakers from all around the world. It was a mini United Nations. In 1940, Rotarians met in Havana, Cuba for their annual convention. And at that convention, Rotarians adopted a resolution calling, amongst other things, for respect for human rights. That was the first time those words, respect for human rights, had entered into the international lexicon. And they became the basis for the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, signed in 1948, one of the most important international treaties, international documents signed in the last century. And since then, we have continued to expand and deepen our relationship with the United Nations in many parts of the world.
And one of those areas has been on the Polioplus program. And we're going to take another, just a very brief look down memory lane, shall we say, at this vintage footage and show a little bit over 2 minutes of a little more of this Rotary United Nations partnership. And we'll come back and talk about that in the Polioplus program.
Through community and international service, Rotary is involved in solutions to many of the same world problems being dealt with today by the UN. Problems like drug abuse, illiteracy and inadequate education, pollution and environmental degradation, as well as sickness and hunger. Increasingly, Rotary International and the UN are finding opportunities to work together for a greater result than either organization could achieve on its own. Nowhere is this more evident than in the area of polio immunization. Thanks in part to collaboration with the World Health Organization and the United Nations Children's Fund, Rotary's Polioplus program is helping to protect 600 million children in the developing world from the crippling effects of polio.
And I've been in India and Pakistan and El Salvador and Colombia, I can go on, where these immunization programs have been backed by the local Rotarians The financial support has come from the global effort, but it's been the Rotarians on the ground who have mobilized the sound trucks, gotten the radio and local newspapers to disseminate information and to really back the social mobilization.
In this instance and others, the United Nations benefits from Rotary's ability to mobilize grassroots support. And, as demonstrated recently in former Yugoslavia, Rotarians gain through expanded opportunities to provide service above self. More importantly, people in need receive help, help which might otherwise never arrive. As the 50th anniversary of the United Nations approaches, Rotary International will continue to develop this partnership and through it seek new opportunities for Rotarians to advance service to mankind wherever it is needed.
Peter, that certainly highlights the importance of working in a partnership. And we think back to, well, really it was 1985 when Rotary International came up with this unique idea to eliminate the scourge of polio from around the world. Then in 1987, went to the United Nations World Health Organization, the UN Children's Fund, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control to get their support and to get involved in this program. And of course, later on, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation came in to be a key player. And there are many others today, and we're just on the edge of eliminating polio. This was a scourge that ravaged the world for decades, maybe centuries, we're not sure, but it is a very important program. It's the largest international health program ever undertaken. But still, the bottom line is it shows how we have to cooperate with a large number of entities to overcome these problems, does it not?
Yes, it's a remarkable partnership. Perhaps one of the most significant international public health policy initiatives ever. We're very proud of the role that Rotary played way back in 1985 in starting the polio eradication initiative. We've enjoyed very strong partnerships with the entities that you mentioned, UNICEF, CDC, the Gates Foundation, WHO, Gavi, and we worked alongside those organizations, not only to administer the drops, but also to establish a very strong infrastructure, which we're now using for COVID-19, and we used the same infrastructure for the H1N1 virus, for SARS. So the contribution that Rotary is making, not just in terms of eradicating polio, but creating a public health infrastructure to handle future disease and future infections, I think will be one of the most enduring legacies of Rotary International.
Peter, it certainly does. Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is a privately funded, independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guest. We would invite our viewers to go to our website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com to view previous programs. Also, if you're involved with a PBS or community access television station, or perhaps an educational institution that has an intra-campus television hookup, or you just have a computer, you have a website, you like our shows, and you'd like to share them, please feel free to do so. Global Connections Television is provided at no cost as a public service to help us better understand international issues and how they impact our lives. Today, we're taking a look at a very unique international organization that spans the globe, but it has local leadership and local programs, and that is Rotary International. My guest today is an expert on Rotary. Mr. Peter Kyle, a native New Zealander, was an international attorney with the World Bank, from which he retired 12 years ago. He was chair of the Rotary Peace Centers Committee, and Mr. Kyle served as the dean of the Rotary Representative Network. Currently, he serves on the Rotary International Board of Directors. Peter, that documentary was fantastic. It showed that unique partnership and how we're focusing on eliminating the scourge of polio. So many people remember the iron lungs. Many people grew up with the iron lungs, and some grew up in an iron lung, but this is just a remarkable program. In that documentary, though, Jim Grant, who is just a giant in the humanitarian area, and he was the director of the UN Children's Fund, commented on how important Rotarians were especially Rotarians who were working in unison with the UNICEF workers and provided the boots on the ground to go to the headwaters of the Amazon or to the shifting sands of the Sahara Desert to reach out and to immunize not just tens of millions, but hundreds of millions of children. How important are those boots on the ground?
Oh, it's the most important activity that Rotary has ever undertaken. We're very proud of our involvement with Rotary. We've raised a lot of money. Rotarians voluntarily have raised probably over $1.5 billion. Been actively involved in advocacy. Senior representatives of the organization lobby for funding from governments around the world, including the United States government, and we're very successful in that endeavor. And we've helped by voluntarily administering the drops. Every year, Rotarians participate in national immunization days, particularly more recently in the countries where polio is still endemic, Pakistan and Afghanistan. So we are very actively involved, as you said, as boots on the ground, but also in terms of our advocacy and our fundraising. It's been a phenomenal effort now for the last 35 years, and we're very proud of what has been achieved, and we're close to eradicating polio. We will eradicate it, and when we do, I think the world will be a better place, and Rotary's reputation will stand high.
Well, Peter, it certainly is. It's a remarkable program that's been undertaken. And when we think back to 1985, when Rotary launched this project, at that time, I think it was like 350,000 cases of polio were identified each year. Millions more of young people, in particular children, were stricken by this horrible disease. Over the years, we see that the Rotary and the United Nations agencies and the Centers for Disease Control and all the partners have really brought those numbers down. And even though we've been pushed back somewhat by the COVID-19 disaster, which has really pushed us back, as I understand it now, we're down to a little over 100 cases of polio per year, which is absolutely remarkable. And not only in the terms of human suffering and death, but I mentioned about 350,000 cases of children struck each year, or people struck each year, but also each year there are over 50,000 people who will not die. And there's an immense savings, financial savings, because through the elimination of polio, the US taxpayer will save over $250 million a year that won't have to be expended on anti-polio programs. Taxpayers around the world will save $1.5 billion a year. And that is money that can be put into other activities, educational activities, into clean water, into combating climate change, and just a variety of other programs. So it is a remarkable program. It's very successful. We're just on the cusp of eliminating polio. Well, Peter, you're involved in a lot of activities, some very important ones. And one is the Rotary Peace Center. You were the chair of that. Tell me, what exactly is the Rotary Peace Center? When was it formed? Why was it formed? What does it do?
Well, the Peace Centers were formed earlier this century. Rotary wanted to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the passing of our founder, Paul Harris. He died in 1947. So in the late 90s, senior Rotarians got together to think of a way that they could best commemorate his contribution to Rotary. And they came up with a program, a scholarship program, or I should say a fellowship program, pursuant to which we have partnered with 8 universities around the world, each of which is renowned for its curriculum for peace and conflict resolution. And each year we provide over 100 fellowships. There are 2 programs. One is a master's program, which is a 2-year fellowship. And we have now a professional certificate program, which is a 1-year course. We have partnered with universities in Bradford, England, in Tokyo, International Christian University, in Brisbane, Australia, University of Queensland, at Uppsala University in Sweden, and Duke University and University of North Carolina, which is a joint program in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And we have two professional certificate programs. One is in Bangkok, Thailand, and the other is about to start in Kampala, Uganda. And we're very proud of this program. We have now over 1,600 graduates, and we're beginning to see the dividends from this program. Many of our Peace Fellows now occupy senior positions in governments, in the United Nations and other international organizations, in the private sector, and actively involved in a wide range of peace-building activities. So my own personal view is that long after we've eradicated polio, and I do want to stress, we are going to eradicate polio, the Rotary Peace Center program may well be Rotary's next most enduring legacy. It's fully funded, program is at no cost to clubs or districts, and we are attracting creme de la creme of applicants. This year we've just announced another batch of graduates, and once again the number of applicants exceeded any previous year. So this is a very popular program, and many of the Peace Fellows working in areas of conflict around the world and doing some remarkable work. So it's an exciting program. We're very proud of it, and we're looking for more applicants. So anyone who's interested in seeing this program, please approach Rotary.org. We'd love to hear from you, and if you have the right background and the right skills and the right qualifications, we'd love for you to join us. Rotary peace building is in Rotary's DNA. Right from the outset, from 1905, we've been involved in many aspects of peace building, and the Rotary Peace Centers program is the latest manifestation of that long-term peace building objective.
It certainly is. And Peter, it is so critical. We all have a role to play. We have to work together to hopefully slow climate change. We'll probably not stop it. We can slow it, perhaps. We have drug problems, as was mentioned in the video. There are problems with the environment over and above climate change. So we all have a role to play, and it's critical to do that. And this is one way to do it. Well, in the last 30 seconds or so that we have, what do you see as your major challenge moving forward? I know COVID-19 is still with us, but hopefully we'll get that under control within the next 3, 4, 5 months. But what do you see as your major challenge?
I think Rotary is at an exciting point in its history. Of course, we've had to transition from an organization that met primarily in person to one that met, at least initially, primarily virtually. But we're at a time when we are now focusing on a new area of focus, environment. We have elevated Rotaract to a full partnership status. There are many exciting things going on in Rotary. There are many humanitarian activities. I think Rotary, there's never been a more relevant, a more important role for Rotarians and Rotary to play. So I'm excited about the future for Rotary. I think we're at the point now where, to some extent, as a result of the changes in connectivity, all sorts of new opportunities have become available to us. So I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to another 115 years of solid Rotary humanitarian service.
And of course, our viewers can go to the www.rotary.org website, or if you want more information on the United Nations, www.un.org. Peter, before we sign off, you mentioned Paul Harris earlier, and I was just thinking about some of the quotes. The man was prolific. He had such deep, well thought out quotes over the years. The guy, he should have been a philosopher. He once said that individuals owe it to themselves and the world to be better informed. And if that were ever true in 1905, it's even more true today with all the misinformation that's out flying around on the Facebook and websites and what have you. But Rotary has a key role to play. And Peter Kyle, I appreciate you being with me today and appreciate everything that the Rotarians, the 1.2 million Rotarians around the world are doing to help create a better world. I want to thank you, sir, for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you, Bill. I've enjoyed being with you.
Thank you. My pleasure. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us today on Global Connections Television.